Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, my psychotic neighbor turned my life into a nightmare and called the police on me after trying to shoot us. He even threatened to hurt my pregnant wife, and this is where I finally drew the line. This guy was totally out of control, and here is what happened. The title story starts like this. After my wife and I got married 2 years ago, we decided to move out of our compact apartment and into a house. The place we found seemed perfect and had a lovely yard for any pets or children we might have, so we put in an offer without a second thought. You know that feeling you get when you know someone is hiding something from you? Well, that's what I was getting from our real estate agent, but I stupidly ignored that red flag and went on with buying the house because it seemed right for us. It was perfect for at least a little while. The immediate neighbors to our left were on vacation when we moved in, but we got some other friendly greetings from others in the area, which we were happy about. However, when we asked about our missing next door neighbors, people seemed uncomfortable and we picked up on the fact that they were not the most well-liked people. There was not much we could do until we met them, so we put the thought aside. My wife Annie and I quickly set about making the place our own and decorating every inch of the space until it was clear it was our space. Being able to freely decorate a space without worrying about a landlord complaining or taking money out of our deposit felt so good to both of us. We were lucky because the house did not need much work done on it, which was a big reason why we bought it in the first place. When the neighbors got back, we quickly understood why the previous owners had left. They were obnoxious and always seemed to be trying to spy on us for some reason. The house was owned by a middle-aged couple named Steve and Linda, who I rarely saw leaving the house, so I don't think either of them had a full-time job. They spent most of the day inside with the curtains drawn, and no one I talked to ever saw them utilizing the backyard at all. They had a dog that would bark throughout the night, and they had frequent large parties that kept everyone in the area up. We asked around about it and were able to find out that the police had been called on them multiple times in the past, but it never did anything to stop the parties. Annie and I were clearly disheartened by the whole thing, but we didn't have the finances to move again, and we also didn't want to admit defeat. We started to make a game out of it and even created bingo cards for all the different things Linda and Steve would do in a given week, sometimes all in a single night. The winner would get out of doing the dishes and everything was still wildly annoying, but it took a bit of the edge off. Our friends got a kick out of playing it when they were over as well. We had been living there a couple of months when we found out Annie was pregnant. It was wonderful news and we were so excited for the next stage of our lives to begin, even if it meant dealing with a crying baby on top of the noise that came from next door, but I thought it meant the neighbors had prepared us for sleepless nights. Annie and her family started planning for a variety of baby-related events while I put together a dinner party. She was about 5 months along at the time and I knew it would be one of the last times we would be able to have an evening with friends without needing to get a babysitter, so we then decided to make the most of it. I invited all of our close friends and put together a fun menu of items. I see myself as an amateur home chef and I enjoy going all out for events. Now, I would not exactly describe my friends as quiet, especially when we get together in a group, but I would not say that we are disruptive. So anyway, on the night of the party, we played some music over speakers, talked and ate, and eventually ending up in the backyard with our drinks. There was definitely a lot of laughter going on, and at some point we heard sirens and one of our friends jokingly suggested someone had called the cops on us. Our laughter faded when the sirens stopped outside of the house and it became clear they were in fact here for us. The officers explained that they had gotten a call about our party being too loud, and I knew that the only people who would think about complaining were Steve and Linda. I explained how they threw parties all the time that were significantly louder than us, so there was really no reason to be mad at us, and the police were understanding but still told us to quiet down. I think our neighbors expected us to be hauled off to jail or something because they moved from watching from their home to standing on the lawn. I noticed that Steve was holding a rifle and I instinctively moved to shield Annie just in case. The officers followed my gaze and saw our neighbor shouting and waving the gun around. There was a sudden bang and we all froze as the cops tackled Steve and wrestled the gun from his hands and took him back to the station. The bullet had actually gone into our home, but no one was inside at the time, so there were no injuries. His wife bailed him out the next day and they both seemed to become even angrier at my wife and I. They went so far as to tell my wife that she would pay for this, which led me to promising myself that I would take them down somehow. It's important to note that I had reason to believe the two of them were drug addicts. When you walked past their house, there was a distinct and horrible smell that wafted out. I often saw Steve entering the house with large containers of acetone and drain cleaner, two things you can use to cook meth, and they were often unusual people going in and out of their house. I collected what evidence I could and called up the local police to tell them what I suspected. They were interested because there had been an increase in drug-related crimes and deaths in recent years, and they wanted to figure out how to prevent it from getting worse. While I was not told all of what they were doing, I know that officers began watching the neighbor's house closely to track their movements and collect further proof of whatever it was they were up to. Annie and I made sure to avoid them whenever possible and didn't do anything that would have the potential to anger them just in case. One weekend we were at home painting the spare room that we were gonna turn into a nursery when we heard shouting coming from outside. We looked out the window and saw multiple officers with riot gear on going into the house next door, and I grinned. It did not take long before Steve and Linda were being escorted outside in handcuffs, looking dismayed. We have not seen any sign of them in months, and it's likely that they won't be back in their house ever again. The neighborhood has been a lot quieter without them, and Annie and I are still working on getting ready for the baby. And here, Ripe stars, obviously, if you decide to be a douchebag towards your neighbors, then please don't make drugs in your own home, because one person or another might contact the police and you will get in big trouble. So, moral of the story, just don't be a douchebag. Anyway, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support me. The next one is titled Elevator Revenge. There are a lot of dogs in my apartment building and we have an elevator. This one guy has this small terrier, probably 7 or 8 pounds. This guy always lets his dog run into the elevator, even when there's people inside trying to get out. He just makes people step over his dog and seems to be one of those dog owners who thinks his dog is so sweet and friendly, even though it's incredibly irritating. I recently adopted a shelter dog, 15 pounds heavy, Reggie, a month or two ago, and he has some leash reactivity. I've been working on him with a professional trainer and it's getting better, but Reggie still needs a little distance. A dog running at him? Forget about it. The first time or two that irresponsible dog owner lets his terrier run at my dog, I tried really hard to restrain him and use my legs as a barrier between the two dogs to get Reggie out of the elevator quickly and safely. However, the third time I was very annoyed. I'm sure fellow leash-reactive dog owners know when you are pulling your dog to the side and trying to calm them down, there's always some a-hole dog owner who keeps letting their dog come closer and closer to say hi, even when it is obvious that you are trying to lead your dog away. I don't know what's wrong with them, but it's becoming a major pet peeve of mine. So anyway, back to irresponsible idiot dog owner IDO with the tiny terrier. Reggie and I were in the elevator again, the door opens and then there's the little terrier sprinting straight into the elevator again. This time though, I don't restrain Reggie and let him do his whole lunging and snapping routine. The terrier sprints away at full speed and the IDO looks like someone just spit in his tea. He follows his terrier away from the door and Reggie and I get plenty of room to leave the elevator while IDO is glaring at us. Reggie seemed to have taught them a lesson. I've only seen IDO and the terrier twice since then, but they were finally waiting away from the elevator door. And the next one is titled Idiotic Customer. I worked at a burger joint back then and I was working through college at the time. This restaurant was brand new and the building was only finished being built 6 months ago. From day one there were electrical problems with the walk-in freezer. This one is the size of most living rooms. Once we even had to throw out all the meat and close for a week for repairs and to replace the stock. Anyway, this is kind of bad for a burger joint to only serve salad, you know. Most of the time I was the barkeep, but sometimes the waiters needed help. This was a day I was helping them as the bar was slow. I see a customer in his 40s whom I will call Ken from here on out and his son who was maybe 10 years old. I take their orders and at first everything is normal. I go get their drinks and put the order in. I then come back and he asks me if he could go back in with his son because he wanted to show off the custom freezer that he installed with his company. He even bragged about needing a crane to lift it into the place. I told Ken no, it was not only a health code violation but also a huge safety issue. He got super angry. He argued that he knew that kitchen better than anyone there. freezer. He himself wired the freezer and his company installed it. The son was looking embarrassed. He even asked his dad to stop and he did not need to see it. Ken berated the kid, asking if he was proud of his dad and the restaurant equipment/electric company he owned. I told him I would go ask the manager just to make him happy. Obviously, I was not gonna ask, I just knew the answer already. So I went to the back for about 2 minutes and ran a load of dishes for the dish guy while I waited on Ken and Son's food. The food came out and I took it to them and told Ken the manager said no. Well, most people would be okay with that. However, this guy, he demanded to speak to the manager himself. So cue malicious compliance. Little did Ken know that I had overheard my manager, who was also the owner, saying that he was gonna sue the company that installed the freezer, but he was having trouble finding out who the owner was so he could have the lawyer address the letter to him. My boss had lost thousands of dollars because of the freezer being incorrectly installed. It passed building and the initial health inspections because the wiring issue was not visible and it held temperature on the inspection day. Oh, was my boss happy when I told him the owner of that freezer installation company was right outside eating a burger. He and I walked out and I introduced Ken as the owner of the company that installed the freezer. Manga put on a big customer service smile. The kind that secretly says screw you. He says he is so happy with the new restaurant, but he needed the owner's card in case there was an issue with the brand new freezer. Ken happily gives the manager his personal card with his personal cell and email. Boss smiles with a real one this time and says, "Thank you. Now my lawyer will be in contact with you soon for the incorrectly installed freezer." Ken just has a mouth hanging open. Before he can say anything, the manager tells him he had 2 new electricians look at it because no one at his office would help him, so he knows it was the freezer and he knows it was his shoddy job that cost him thousands in monetary loss. He also adds that if he attempts to leave without paying, he will be arrested because now the manager has his name and phone number. Manager/owner did sue and won close to $50K in damages. And Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that was absolutely brilliant. So, moral of the story here, if you do a crappy job and decide to be a douchebag, better don't go back to the crime scene, and the crime scene in this case being the place where you shoddily installed your freezers. Anyway, the next one is an Am I the Jerk story. I am a Latina woman married to an American man. We live in a small community in Florida where most people are nice and kind to me, and for context, I love cleaning. I like trying new products just for fun. A couple of times I've offered to clean other people's houses free of charge just to help them. Among them, a widow who recently lost her husband of 50 years, a neighbor who had a baby and has a 3-year-old daughter, and another neighbor who had a car accident. I usually go to their houses and I clean for them once or twice a week. A few days ago I was sitting on my couch when I heard someone knocking on my door. It was a bit strange because we have a doorbell. I opened the door and this lady around 40 years old, whom I've seen just a couple of times, said, "It took you a while to open the door." I looked at her like I didn't understand what she just said and I only mumbled, "Huh?" She then asked me in the most entitled tone, "I wanna know, when are you gonna clean my house for free?" At this point I was trying not to laugh and I just asked her, why would I do that? She then proceeded to mention all the houses in the neighborhood I've cleaned and she wanted to know why I haven't been to her house yet. She then yelled at me, yes, yelled loud enough to make my next door neighbor come outside to see what's going on, and she was yelling at me because I was not replying to her. I was still trying to process how on earth this woman thought she had the right to come to my house and demand that I clean her house for free. I just said, I'm never gonna clean your house. I am not the neighborhood's maid, I've only helped a few people. And she then demanded that I help her, and at this point I had enough, so I just said F off and I closed the door. Later that day when my husband got home, she ran to him and told him I'm a rude person and how I yelled at her. When I explained him what happened, he told me I shouldn't have talked to her like that and next time I should be nicer. Am I the jerk here? Comment number 1, not the a-hole, maybe you should tell your husband to F off too, and while you're at it, stop cleaning houses for free. You are not the help here. If you keep doing that, that's all they will view you as. Comment number 2, not the a-hole, that neighbor is incredibly rude and your husband's response was insane. Next time when someone shows up to your home and demands you clean their home, be nicer? Hell no! Comment number 3, you're not the hired help and not the a-hole, and you're not there to service other people. Your husband should really step up for you. It doesn't matter why she came to you, she had no right to talk to you like that, and let's be real, probably she thought she could do that due to your race. It's happened to my Mexican friend living in a very wide area of the Northeast. It definitely happens. And yeah, ripe stars, let me know in the comments whether you think OP is the a-hole here. But I would say, if you're not completely stupid, then obviously OP is not the a-hole here. And the way the entitled neighbor was talking to OP was absolutely disgusting. I wish only the worst for this neighbor. But props to OP for staying calm. The next one is titled Continuous Petty Revenge. This is my proudest act of petty revenge, just so you all know. Almost 25 years ago, I scraped every last penny I had to buy a house. I was 7 months pregnant and already had a young daughter. We decided to exchange and complete on the same day as the house was vacant possession. On the day of completion, I get a call from my solicitor to say the lady selling the house won't complete the sale unless we agree to pay an additional £500 for some curtains and carpet. I really did not have a choice as I was moving out of a rented house the same day. The money I was forced to use had been saved to provide for the impending baby and a fridge. I went without a fridge for 2 months and had to take hand-me-downs for baby equipment. Roll on a couple of months later and a letter from the bank arrived for the seller. Being nosy, I opened it to find it was a quarterly dividend check. I dropped it straight in the bin as I thought I would deprive her as she deprived me. 25 years later, we are about to complete the sale on this house. The checks have arrived every quarter for our entire ownership like clockwork and have been filed straight in the bin. I am sure the new owners will be much nicer than me and return the letters to the bank from which they were sent. I am happy I have deprived the previous owner of their money for 25 years. And I can only hope they fell on hard times and this money would have made a real difference to them. Revenge is petty, but oh so sweet. And the next one is titled Revenge on My Ex. Have you ever dated someone that you knew might be trouble, but you did it anyway even if there were numerous red flags? Well, unfortunately I did. I dated a guy for several years. Admittedly, I knew he had a history of cheating, but like everyone in that position, I somehow convinced myself that us being friends before would stop him from being so awful to me. Naturally, I was incorrect. He began to mistreat me, blame me for every negative in his life. He suffered from addiction and refused to speak to a therapist, just lashed out at me no matter how I tried to help. Finally, I became physically ill and he began to pull away when I really needed support because I was supposedly too much for him. At this point, I should give relevant information. He was in a band. He refused to work or do anything productive in case it got in the way of his band. He had worked part-time off and on, but it was pulling teeth to get him to hold on to these jobs to even pay his rent. He ended up mooching off of family and friends. I would not pay his bills and he resented me deeply for it by this stage. So, one night the band had a party. Usually I'd be there, but I was not feeling well and went to sleep early. I woke up to a half-dozen messages of girls who knew me, letting me know my ex-boyfriend at the time was cheating on me. He told me it was not true when confronted, but eventually it came out that he had been continually cheating on me with at least 2 to 3 women, one of whom was a minor. We broke up and he ended up starting a relationship with said minor and the whole thing was really creepy. But I was gutted less so over the relationship, but more because it forced a lot of our friends to pick sides, and unfortunately, as I was not in the band, it left me mostly in the losing side. Once I stopped feeling bad for myself, I decided the best thing to do to cheer myself up was to be as petty as possible. Firstly, I went to get my stuff from his place. As he never worked much, most of what he had was bought by me. I took all of his laundry baskets, sheets, any clean socks and underwear I could find, some even dirty, I did not discriminate too much, any stray screws, guitar picks, light bulbs, etc., and threw it all in the laundry baskets. Then I dropped said laundry baskets in a nearby dumpster, knowing I had caused him that inconvenience made me feel a teensy bit better. Then I began a different maneuver. From that point on, anytime I thought of him and became upset or annoyed, or he or his new girlfriend posted about me, which was surprisingly often, I would use his band email or phone number and input them into those marketing campaigns in exchange for in-game currency for whatever game I was playing. Posting about me on social media? Okay, I will just spend 20 minutes putting your phone number into every marketing campaign I can find. Hearing stories about him talking badly about me at parties? Bet that email address won't be very useful from now on. It was small, but knowing how much mild irritation I could cause for him and his band without having to engage was greatly cathartic. It's also more or less become my standard form of petty revenge for anyone who irritates me now, because I hope you like 30+ insurance agents calling. Edit, because no one reads the comments for important details. This was in answer to why I did not say I contacted the police. Firstly, it would not be petty, and secondly, her parents did. By the time they were public, she had just turned 17 and no authority wanted to do anything, because by the time it went to court, she would be 18 or almost 18. She did end up dropping out of high school to move in with him and avoid truancy issues. It's really very tragic on her part, so I did not involve her with any of the pettiness. Her parents tried to get involved, but there was not much they could do. Another edit, myself and several people did get together to notify authorities, but we spoke to her brother and apparently everyone in her family was aware and okay with it. Up until she started missing school. I have no excuses for them. There was also a lot of deeply poor parenting going on there, but she had a reputation for being very open to sleeping with older men, one that I actually interfered with. I made a point to tell everyone who spoke with her and any other girls her age at parties she showed up to that she was a minor and preventing guys from getting close. She was not a fan of me at all. And yeah guys, I would say this was pretty decent petty revenge, but I feel like this sort of dude deserved even bigger revenge. But sometimes on r/petty revenge, that's all you get. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.